All right, you're here where the action is hot and heavy. Lucas, we've just wrapped up an interesting episode of Friday Night SmackDown. Started with some newsworthy kind of topics as far as the power outage goes, but ended with quite an interesting promo there as well. So, of course, we're going to preview United Champions here. But seeing as we've just got done with SmackDown, what are your initial thoughts on SmackDown from Saudi?
Yeah, I thought it was a very good episode of SmackDown. To be fair, tonight, obviously the half an hour kind of blackout kind of was a bit annoying, but the shows kind of soon got back on track.
Yeah.
I thought it was a very good episode. There's a lot of talent featured, which is quite interesting, including some
Mm.
backstage segments featuring the tag team division, featuring stuff going on with the women's division and stuff between the general managers. What was interesting though, my interesting note though, is that 2 shows in a row now they've done the general manager about to make an announcement regarding the women's tag belts and then get interrupted.
Mm.
And so it does beg the question: are they just saving it until next week after the pay per view to get this out of the way, or do they genuinely just not know what's going to go on and
Yeah.
decide
Yeah.
it? Because obviously with Liv Morgan injured and just not able to defend the titles at the moment,
Mm.
they're gonna have to obviously do something about that. And it seemed that they did tease even the segment with Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. Like, are they potentially going to become a tag team? On the SmackDown side of things, yeah. But I thought that they did a very good job of spotlighting a lot of talent. But it does kind of worry me ahead of next week though, because next week they're moving back to 2 hours. And if you kind of look at this episode, all in, you're thinking, there was quite a lot that he featured,
Mm.
and they got onto the show that wouldn't really get on a 2 hour broadcast.
Yeah.
Which obviously what they're going to, I don't want to say the word permanently because they've obviously has 3 hours on Raw and then they put it down to 2, but it just seemed that for the time being at least that we're moving back to a 2 hour broadcast from
Yeah.
next Friday.
Yeah, like you say, they managed to squeeze a lot on here. I'm not a fan of the 3 hour shows. I've said it time and time again, but it was still an enjoyable show. It did drag for me. I wish it was 2 hours. I'm not going to lie, but as you say, there are going to be people that don't get to get featured, and more so when I feel like I like them doing the shows now the day before a PLE when they go to a different country. I do quite like that now. The only thing is, it kind of sometimes takes away from that first initial pop and excitement of seeing such and such fan base, in whatever country they are. But it almost feels like a great opener really for the weekend of the PLE. You get a lot of the guys that aren't going to get featured on the PLE, and they're kind of giving you PLE level matches. I mean, we saw a Lice Woman standing match here. We saw a Fate cash in. We saw some heavy hitters as far as like headliners being featured on the show, at least in promo spots. And then again, yeah, those who aren't going to get matches on the big PLE itself did have some kind of big moments in storyline progression. You mentioned the tag team situation, very much threaded and weaved throughout the entire night as well. That's been a division that needs to be on the PLE for the longest time. But yeah, overall, I agree, man. I think it was a good SmackDown. We say it a lot, did what it needed to do, got us kind of in the mood for Saturday night, really.
Can I say I think it might be one of the stronger kind of go home episodes of television we've had in a while.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
the, the product's been very weird for it lately. Obviously there's a lot of Vinceisms that they wanted to get rid of, I guess. But there's something that I think he always did very well when he was in charge. What was done very very well was if there's a pay per view the next night
Mm,
or the week after, whatever, you would see kind of the main people all featured, and we saw that all tonight. We saw obviously both finalists for the King and Queen of the Ring. They went face to face, had their segments. We saw the main event, obviously Cena and Punk in action. We saw Jake
mm,
for 2. Obviously, he'd be defending the US Championship against Solo Sikoa. Obviously we didn't see the Raw side of things. Obviously, got Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez.
Raquel, yeah.
But it generally felt like, oh yeah, there actually is a show tomorrow night. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it actually is like quite an important show. Like, it's been a bit of an odd build to get to this event
Mm,
because we've had matches change. This past week, obviously
yeah.
we're missing an IC Championship match, but yeah, tonight I think they restacked it in a really good way. Obviously, the tag situation will be interesting to see how they where they go
Yeah,
from
yeah.
here, because obviously they've done the DQ kind of no contest kind of finish now,
Mm.
the tag belts. But you have to imagine that. You have to imagine that I sense and I smell a steel cage might be coming into play,
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah,
obviously all the other tag teams trying to get their hands on, obviously the White Six.
yeah,
Usually the way to get around this is to book a steel cage match,
yeah.
um, and maybe that's the direction they go into, and perhaps that might even be able to get on a PLE.
Who knows? I mean, we saw a fantastic TLC match a few months back, and it made it. I was at the time thinking, well, does this just prove it should have been on, or is this going to be okay? Well done, you did a great SmackDown segment, and it kind of feels like that it was the latter, which is a shame because I think that match deserved to be in WrestleMania, and a lot of this feud I think deserves to be. I say feud, it's kind of a interwoven thing, isn't it? It's been going on
Mm,
for months now with all these tag teams, but I've enjoyed it. And it does, we've had this debate before, but it does make SmackDown and the weekly shows more kind of enjoyable. But at the same time, that wears thin when they aren't good enough, it would seem, to be put in a PLE. But again, we've had a few conversations like that in the past, so we won't stick too long on it. What we'll do in a moment is we'll move into Night of Champions properly. We'll kind of predict the card. We'll predict the results through the card and things like that as well. We're going to get to some of these comments here as well. We saw Kim earlier on saying
okay.
that they think CM Punk will win. Kieran says, I have a feeling that Roman will return at Night of
Mm,
Champions, so we could be seeing that there as well. Scarlett's in the house and says Canelo or Crawford. I've got no one in this, mate, because I haven't been keeping up with it or anything like that. But something I'm a bit more familiar with at the moment is John Cena. So, Cena winning tomorrow, says Scarlett. So we'll see how we go there as well. And Christian is also in the house saying hi as well. So drop your comments down below, guys. Let us know what you think of SmackDown. Did you enjoy the show? And what you think is going to happen at Night of Champions. Before we do dive into Night of Champions proper, let's go back to that big talking point from the beginning, Lucas. I mean, kind of not much to say, but at the same time, noteworthy, so we should mention it. But
mhm,
basically, about a minute into the broadcast, it felt the whole thing just completely cut out. And they did that looped footage of, we'll be right
mm,
back. And it played for, I think, 25 minutes.
yeah.
Now, apparently, I've seen some footage of it, Orton in the ring, basically yeeting and stuff like that, and they were just kind of killing time like that. Still don't really know what happened with the Cody Orton promo. I'm sure it was the same old stuff they always sort of say when it's a go home show, and they've got a few to build. But of course, that is the King of the Ring finals. We'll be touching on that as far as predictions go very soon. But a very unfortunate thing for WWE to experience, essentially, and they're lucky in some ways because they've got SmackDown again at time of recording at the moment. SmackDown hasn't aired in the US, so they can edit around it. They did go over. They do have that kind of freedom on Netflix to do so, and they can kind of tweak things essentially. But I was really surprised that when they came back on air, which I think was handled really well, by the way, by Barrett and Cole, they just made jokes out of it and whatever else and apologized. I was surprised that they didn't just quickly say, that opening segment is now on WWE's YouTube.
Mm.
You can watch it at the end of the or something like that. Maybe they will do something like that, and they just didn't get around to it. But what are your thoughts of the way it was handled and kind of just the surreal nature of sitting there for 25 minutes and not knowing what was going on?
Yeah, I think they could have handled it better. Obviously, they always bang on about the fact they've got such a strong social media following and presence. Could you use any of that just to communicate?
Yeah,
Like,
they didn't really say anything until it was
because
about
we're
to come
going
back
on
on
for
air.
quite a while.
So
One can only imagine that, with regards to putting a segment on YouTube, they most likely have a contract with USA Network, who would be a bit annoyed if all of a sudden, a few hours before they're meant to get their premiere of SmackDown,
yeah,
the
but
start of the show's
they
gone on
can
YouTube.
though. They can do it region block. They can just
Yeah,
stick it up
yeah, I
everywhere
get.
but the US. But yeah, I know it's a trick. This might make them have a contingency plan going forward, essentially.
Well, what's interesting though is obviously earlier this year they did the whole tour of Europe, and as far as I remember, and I'm sure there might be someone out there who had some sort of issue, it ran perfectly. We
Yeah,
were able to watch SmackDown and Raw from all over Europe, and it's all been fine. And I've genuinely had, I can, you know, and sometimes just my Wi-Fi maybe. I've generally had, I can count on one hand how many actual problems I've had with any kind of viewing of the content
yeah,
on Netflix. It's been a really good experience. So I think, fans who are kind of commenting and being a bit angry, a bit annoyed, just remember we have had 6 months of, again, say, think whatever you want to think about the product and according to the
mm,
product, but in terms of the actual stream and the actual technological ways of
yeah.
it going, like it's been like pretty smooth, isn't it? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, even going back to that first one, remember everyone was like, "How's it going to work?" The first live broadcast, because they'd done the Jake Paul, I should say, and Tyson fight, but everybody was kind of, in the dark essentially when it came to that first Monday Night Raw. That was, the debut back in January. That it, as you say, could have gone wrong. And 6 months in, the fact it hasn't is, and we still don't know what the cause was this time round. But hopefully, it's something they can get on top of in future. And yeah, I mean, at least it weren't a WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, I think even just at least it wasn't a match as well. I think that would be
Yeah,
obviously. Yeah, one would imagine they've probably got a 3 hour pre-show tomorrow. They can just replay the segment then tomorrow, I'm guessing.
true,
Um,
true.
and then there'll be the promo package and stuff. But obviously, it does feel a bit like it's always a bit annoying, these technical problems. But I guess they did their best to get it back on track.
Yeah,
I think once the show kind of restarted, it was good. And I guess the saving grace for us is that this was happening at 6:30, 7 p.m. UK,
true.
and
Yeah,
not 1 or 2 a.m.
yeah,
as would usually be the case. But yeah, I'm sure by the time it goes out on USA Network tonight, it will be as if nothing ever happened.
yeah,
And I think it will just be one of those things that maybe gets put on, gets talked about on podcasts and stuff, and like a little laughing joke for a little bit. But in terms of how they do it going forward, I think they got to remember their main business is producing live events. So I think as long as the live event attendance people were happy,
yeah,
especially them being in Saudi Arabia, as long as people in Saudi Arabia that are paying the millions upon millions of
yeah.
dollars for these events, as long as they are happy, I think that will be all that matters. But yeah, let's just pray and hope it doesn't happen during Night of Champions, as that is it seems like a very big deal actually this year, I must admit.
One that we saw quite an interesting setup for on the go home edition of SmackDown, which I do want to get your thoughts on in a minute, Lucas, because it was quite interesting. We came on the air earlier on; it was still live. I was live reacting to it, and then we started a little bit of a review of SmackDown, but we didn't really touch on that final segment. So before we get to the match, before we get to, I guess, anything else that's happened in this feud so far, what were your thoughts on Punk Life, as the new Doctor of Thuganomics made his way to the ring in Chicago sports gear and rapped pretty impressively, I got to say, to remember as much as he did. Look, he remembers promos all the time. Don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have to. He has to hit certain points. Here, he had to, and you could say, oh, about rapping skills, he's not up there with certain, legendary acts or anything like that. But to simply remember those rhymes, I think he did really well. He stumbled a little bit, but look, it's going to happen. Overall, I thought it was quite interesting. Something I never expect to see from a CM Punk type character, but I think that's why I loved it so much. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I thought that last week was fantastic too. Obviously, the throwback to the pipe bomb.
Yeah.
This episode being 14 years to the day
Fantastic,
of
yeah.
that pipe bomb promo, and him obviously mimicking Cena. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah, he stumbled a little bit, but we all do from time to time. It's one of those promos though. I think the only thing, and this thing, sorry, I want to say this actually. The crowd was actually really good for SmackDown, right?
Yeah.
So before I say what I'm about to
Especially
say,
at the beginning, before the technical thing.
yeah,
They were on fire,
yeah.
but I think I know where you're going with this one.
And yeah, throughout the matches, most of the matches they were really, really positive towards the one, and that was good. It seemed like they were having a good time. But the crucial thing is, they still are like an international territory where there's still a bit of a language barrier potentially, and so some of the lines didn't hit as hard.
Yeah.
They're not used to
Like the wordplay and stuff like that. I think it's difficult,
I think like when he mentioned about I think as well there's a timing issue as well. Like obviously with comedies about timing, and obviously Punk was going slow to maybe like an English speaking person, but maybe to them they were unable to
catching
kind of
up.
follow
Yeah.
it potentially. Because particularly the line, I thought the line obviously, about how they brought back Nikki Bella.
Yeah.
That I think in an American crowd that would have been
got a big yeah. It got a bit of one, but not like it. And again, and this is the fact that people can speak more than one language is incredible anyway. And clearly they understand enough because they react to a lot of things. But really, you do have to hit just kind of key notes. And I felt the same way. I can't remember which show it was. It might have been. know if it's Berlin or one of the other international shows where. No, it might even been when we were covering the Raws and SmackDowns in Europe, where some of the promos, just didn't quite hit the same because it would have been that country's second language, for example, or it wouldn't be their first, essentially. But that being said, as you say, the crowd were really on fire. Punk delivered quite well. Cena just did what he needed to do, which was look confused and annoyed at the same time. And I think it sold this match in a way that I didn't expect. I mean, we saw Punk on the kickoff show, WWE's version of the kickoff at least, saying that, I'm going to do something big on SmackDown. Never expected to be this. And I give him credit for trying something like this. You mentioned last week with the pipe bomb as well. I think we could do a whole series on the original pipe bomb someday. I'd love to dive into that further. But so I like seeing this one. I like the references, the callbacks to the original one as well. Again, for Punk to come back and kind of take a leaf out of Cena's book here this week, I think was really good.